Well, hello there, class. Welcome to week 8. Can you believe that we're at the end? Um, I want to say a couple things. Obviously, this class, some unexpected things occurred. Things did not necessarily go as we had anticipated in some ways, some unexpected realities. Even the fact that, you came in thinking it was going to be a full 8-week face-to-face class, and then we hit a few weeks as far as the planned weeks that were going to be in the online format, and then of course last week being another online week, which was unexpected. And I thought about kind of how that parallels to life, right? So our lives in general, and the idea of work and vocation and calling and discernment, and just kind of as we, excuse me, think through our lives, things don't always go accordingly. They don't always go like we had hoped. We have some times where we need to spend time in solitude, where we need to be by ourselves and not in the midst of groups. Now, sitting amongst all of you in our class together, it was clear and obvious that there were some of you that were the kind of the external communicator processor people. Like I just open my mouth and I see what happens. That's kind of people in my camp, right? And I'm on that side of the aisle. And then there's others that you've got great things to say, but you say them sparingly, and you're not one that just opens their mouth and starts to talk and see what happens. You speak when you have things that are fully formulated and you've processed the information, so they're more introverted. And so for some of us, we need that group dialogue, and others of us, we need that time to think and then respond. But I think it's fair to say that it's better for all of us if we are people that can spend time in solitude, in time kind of solo contemplation, to take even what we hear and learn and think in groups and then put into practice in our own and I don't mean this in a bad way, but isolated lives, knowing that I just need to kind of think through this content, right? So we are making decisions for ourselves. You for you, me for me. We may inform and we might speak into other people's lives, but ultimately, the decisions that we make, the life that we live, we are responsible for us, right? So we should be people that speak wisdom, we speak compassion, we're empathetic, we speak concern and challenge and encouragement to others, but ultimately, I have to make sure that I'm making wise decisions for me, because no one makes decisions for myself, right? So as you think about the class, we have looked at a lot. We have read Every Good Endeavor, and we hear a really nuanced, I think, beautiful way of communication that Tim Keller has talked about, and just I think some really creative, exciting ways, some different ways to think about it. A very I guess you could say diplomatic and not just diplomatic, but a very biblical basis for how we think about work. And then this latest book we just finished with transitions, and thinking about how do we go through transitions? What does that even look like for us? How do I deal with change in my life and the different things that come with that, right? The transitions within that change. What does that look like for me personally? And then thinking about the gift of being yourself. Man, what a book that was. That's a challenging book to think about in some different ways, especially for those of us who grew up in the church. It's an interesting take to think about that. Now, it's not a unique take. I mean, we have things that Calvin talks about years back, and we have C.S. Lewis saying similar things. But this idea is it's challenging to think about. Do I know myself well? How God has kind of wired me, who He's created me to be? And then in that, knowing God, do I find that I find myself to know myself better? And then, of course, as we look at Buckingham's book and this idea of standouts, an assessment, it's just kind of a baseline. It gives some information about who we are. My wife and I were talking about some assessments last night, and it sounds like our worlds just kind of revolve around these assessments. The latest one we've been talking about is the Enneagram. And there's a lot of outspoken critics of all of these assessments. I was reading kind of a scathing report of the Enneagram last night, how it's pseudoscientific. And maybe so, right? Maybe so. Maybe it is. But what it does is it gives us a baseline to have a conversation and go, yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Same thing with the Strengths Finder. So Jane is now, she's part of the inner circle. We've all completed our Strengths Finder. That's helpful. But again, it just kind of gives us information. So now I know myself a little bit better. And we took all these assessments, entrepreneurship and work as meaning and calling, and even we took this career anchors. And obviously, the career anchors is much more involved than the other assessments. It's something you have to actually work through and read some content. And I love that it says at the beginning of the workbook, it says this book is ultimately about career development. But I hope that as you look at this book and take this assessment and look at everything else that we have put together, you are able to clearly make some connections that between this idea of vocation in one hand and this idea of career development in the other hand, and how these are not two separate things. They just can't be. They have to be looked at as kind of intricately woven together realities. So when I'm teaching, as I've mentioned before, my career development class for graduate psychology, I'm bringing in calling and vocation. And when I'm teaching vocation, I'm bringing in career development, because we can't look at things separate. We have to look at them as one big picture because they inform one another. They have to. And I don't think that we can do full career development discussion and actually work if we're not thinking about things from a vocational standpoint. This idea of calling, what is meaningful work? And so I hope that as you think about this, you can look at even some of the bumps along the way. Maybe some, you missed an assignment here or there, or you were confused on this, or you really, weren't sure how this assignment necessarily connected. And then as you kind of zoom out and look at our course, you go, oh, I see now. Or even as you're completing your vocational profile and plan, you're thinking about how do all these things fit in. Well, you took 8 assessments. You wrote 4 books. You've lived the life that you've lived that you know better than anybody. And every now and again, if we don't spend time to slow down and think, we may miss things, as we talked about in class. And so you have slowed down. You've spent 30 minutes a week, hopefully, in prayer, contemplation, meditation, thinking through, man, who am I? Where have I come from? Who has informed my way of thinking? Where would I be if not but for this person or that person? And reconnecting and hearing them talk about this idea of when you're at your best. Thinking about all of these different, both theoretical, conceptual, and practical realities that we've explored in this class. So I got an email from a student who said this is one of the favorite classes they've taken in the program. And now hear me, I know it's not because of me as this instructor that just like blew your socks off every time we're together. I know it wasn't the assignments like, oh, that was a really insightful question. But what it did is it caused us to think deeply about who we are. Who are you? Who am I? And not all classes are going to have that element that we're going to slow down and think deeply about who we are. But hopefully, at the end of the day, when you're all done with this class and your final assignments are submitted, my hope is that you can look back on the last 8 weeks and go, okay, I see how it all fit, and I see how that has informed my thinking, which has informed my belief system, which has informed my actions. So you see, there's that logical progression. What we fill our minds with informs the way we think, which informs the way we believe, which informs the way that we act, because we act out our beliefs. And if you take it back, we act out what it is that we are filling our minds with and what it is that we think about certain things. And ultimately, in a program on leadership, as we asked in week 1, why is there a class like this in a leadership program? My hope is that you will see that the connection point there is the more you know yourself, the more you lead yourself, the more you master yourself. And we will never master ourselves, but as we're working toward that, the better leader of self you will be, and ultimately the better leader of others you will be. So I know that there's some finishing touches. We've got one last class meeting. I'm going to send a note out. We should have some food signups for sure. We're going to have some presentations. So watch for the email that comes with this video and respond with what you can bring for food. There's only going to be, 5 students and myself. So we've got, I believe, just 2 presentations left. So 2 or 3 presentations. So there's 5 students, myself. Bring some food. We'll do our presentations. I'll have some final thoughts. I will actually post some final thoughts to Sakai so everybody can kind of take part in that. And then you can sign up as far as the order of when you want to go in class from presentation standpoint and what food you want to bring. So thanks for a great term. It has been such a joy to know you, to be with you, to learn from you. And I look forward to our future interactions beyond this class. But until then, I look forward to seeing you in class this Thursday evening.